questions. Perhaps start with Stian. I think that Skretting has been very active in looking at the land-based movements in the salmon industry and in other species. I'd just like to get your sense of how at Skretting you look at this movement and what's happening, and perhaps if you think there's a disconnect between disproportionate investor interest, or this is just the way that aquaculture is going right now.
Sure. So the global population, of course, will reach close to 10 billion by 2050, and it needs quality protein. So ROS is actually perfectly in line with our purpose of feeding the future. It's not, in our view, a replacement for traditional farming. It's not a case of ROS or traditional. It's a case of ROS and traditional. And we are heavily committed to the success of the industry. ROS technology allows for creation of an ecosystem that creates similar environment to traditional farming. And there are several interesting species, including salmon, which we all know tends to get a lot of headlines in the newspapers, but also notably yellowtail, barramundi, and shrimp, to mention a few. And what I really like about ROS personally is that it makes it possible to farm fish everywhere, so irrespective of location and species. And our job as a company and a feed producer is to ensure that feed is not a limiting factor to this, to the expansion. And by limiting factor, I mean aquaculture in any form. So we are a market leader in ROS. And we have produced patented feed solutions for years, early life stages in all salmon geographies, and also, for example, we're doing full grow out now in both Europe and North America. The competence is based on decades of R&D, including dedicated ROS research facilities. And you mentioned, I think, the turbulent stock markets and our views on that. So we look at ROS in the long term. We are not too concerned about the sentiment of the market. And as you know, New Frontiers, which is a separate division within Nocera from Skretting, has done some investments in ROS. I don't think that they are following the movements in the stock market too closely. Their mandate is to create or to make sure that we participate in long-term value generation. So that's our view on that.
Thank you. Perhaps I'll just go around a little bit with this question. It seems to be quite a recurrent question. Stian, how do you see this, the different margins between species? Has Skretting kind of focused more on, say, one or two species rather than others, just because you see different margins in the business?
Yeah, so I think the last speaker made an excellent point that it's of course very dependent on many factors such as location and technology and operational excellence, etc. Up until now, our main focus, you could say, has been salmon, but that doesn't mean that we believe more in salmon than other species, or we think that all the money, let's say, put it that way, is in salmon. That has to do with active projects around the world that we've been involved in.
Thank you. And actually, I thought I would pose a similar question to Stian, just on the challenges with RAS. Perhaps if you could answer that, and also just. I think as well, like maybe just what has changed, has the technology or has anything changed? So are these systems still just as prone to failure as they were 5 or 10 years ago?
Sure. So I think it's important to recognize that there are risks involved with being a pioneer in a segment such as ROS. Achieving biological and operational excellence, it isn't going to be a straight line. As we've seen with some of the incidents in the media, it may be a bumpy road. But we also have to remember that early days of aquaculture didn't come without obstacles. It's part of the industry DNA to solve these challenges with innovation. And we are a science-based company. We strongly believe that the challenges facing ROS today can be solved through technology. And I love this anecdote about Skretting's history, where in 1960 we conducted our first aquaculture trials in wooden pens in a fjord with rainbow trout. And from a few thousand individuals caught and fed to survive, which of course at the time was considered a huge success. And these 2 individuals became 6 meals. And then if you fast forward to 2019, Skretting has produced feed to support 21.5 million seafood meals every day. And the gap between 1960 and 2019 was bridged primarily through R&D. Now in Skretting alone annually, we spend 15 million euros on innovation through ARC, which is our aquaculture research center. And we have a team of experts at ARC working with RAS, as well as dedicated RAS facilities. So we can examine the impact of the feed, not only on the fish, but also on the system itself.
Right. Actually, I was just a quick follow-up question. How much can changes in feed formula tackle some of these challenges? We typically see a lot of the failures around the biofilter and the accumulation of H2S. I just wondered if feed can in any way sort of, address those challenges.
Sure. So we are working closely with all of our customers to understand their specific needs and support their success. And feed, as you hint to, is an important input to the many different interactions that take place within the facility. Because as we know in RAS, you're not only feeding the fish, but you're also feeding the system. And the quality of RAS feed contributes to less waste and more fish at a lower risk. This is independent of species. It was a good point I thought earlier, where I think it was John who mentioned that what we're learning in salmon, both traditional and within RAS, is applicable to other species as well. The fish needs good digestibility. The farmer needs a low FCR, and that's achieved through precise nutrition. Also, the system needs good feed physical quality with minimal waste and easily removable feces. And I think that we have the products to address these factors and greatly reduce the risk for our customers. Now, our RAS feed concept is being rolled out alongside the projects being built across the globe. We have initiated a factory certification program to ensure that the RAS feeds are of consistent high quality. So it doesn't matter where in the world you want to place your system, as long as we have a certified plant that can supply it, you can expect the same quality as you would in a different region.
Stian, what's your view? Regional or we see global developments?
Sure, yeah. Well, if I'm looking at it from our perspective, then I have to look to New Frontiers. For those of you who don't know, New Frontiers is the investment arm of Nutreco. It's independent from Skretting, where I work. And they make investment in RAS projects on standalone business decisions. But our joint purpose is the same. It's feeding the future. That's the overarching reason for investing. And Nutreco invests for the sake of learning and to identify new opportunities to solve challenges in feeding a growing population. Now, in addition to this, I think it's important to say that we need the innovation, right? We need, for example, land-based to create and sustain more food production capacity. And in addition, New Frontiers invest in companies that we think, and now I'm talking about both Nutreco and Skretting, that we can add value to and to contribute to the success of, meaning boosting their growth or through careful focus on technology, on people, and also on investments. And parts of why we do it, parts of the return on investment that we're expecting is the opportunity to learn as much as we can early in the game, right? Because as I said, we're still in the pioneering stage here, which allows us to focus on how to contribute and better supply the market through feed and services. And eventually, of course, you never know, these investments may drive learning to support future business opportunities and also something that we can build on when we supply other species that enters the segment as well.